009, huh? I thought I put on the thing. No, no, on the thought it was on the second.
Good morning. The meeting of the Louisiana Tax Commission is hereby called to order. The meeting is being held at the offices of the Louisiana Tax Commission at 1051 North 3rd Street, Suite 225, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The date is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. The time is 9 a.m. Please call the roll.
Chairman Roussel,
Here?
Commissioner Leone,
Here.
Commissioner Romick,
Here.
Commissioner Guidry,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier.
Here.
5 present and a quorum.
Okay. Any old business to come before the commission? Okay. If not, we'll move on to the approval of minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes, I believe, of the May 7th meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today we have a total of 709 change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve 676 and place 33 in pending status. Staff requests approval of these change orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the 676 change orders and place 33 in pending status for reasons given by staff.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today we have a total of 40 prior pending change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve all 40. Staff requests approval of the prior pending change orders.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the total prior pending change orders as reviewed and requested by staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. The next item is a consideration of a proposed contract for legal services for fiscal year 2025-26. All commissioners were sent the proposed contract. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract for legal services for fiscal year 2025-2026.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tanisha Malvo for the Louisiana Tax Commission. Staff has received and reviewed the 2025 Orleans Parish Millage Report for contributions to the state retirement system. The LTC is required to approve this report, and as it is a report that coincides with their tax roll filings each year and forwarded to the Louisiana Legislative Auditors upon our approval. Therefore, I request approval of the 2025 Orleans Parish Millage Report for contributions to the state retirement system.
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 2025 Orleans Parish Millage Report for contribution to State Retirement System, Bureau of Treasury.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Next item is the consideration of decision on the following matters.
Mr. Chairman, in light of the nature of the two parcels that are being presented, being that the parcels are contiguous, I would move that we consolidate these appeals for purposes of a decision today. Specifically, I move that we consolidate the matter of Mercy Partners LLC versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-22172-085, with the matter of Mercy Partners LLC versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23-22172-086, for the purposes of entering a decision today.
Okay, so the first motion is to combine the two appeals into one. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move in the now consolidated matters of Mercy Partners LLC versus Assessor Errol G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket numbers 23-22172-085 and 23-22172-086, that we set the total fair market value for both parcels at $3,182,850, with a land value of $2,541,450 and an uncontested improvement value of $641,400, allocated as follows.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. For docket number 23-22172-085, a total value of $477,170, with a land value of $214,770 and an uncontested improvement value of $262,400. And for docket number 23-22172-086, a total value of $2,705,680, with a land value of $2,326,680 and an uncontested improvement value of $379,000. Mr. Chairman, these totals are rounded, but my motion is based on a price per square foot of $12.31 for the 206,454 square feet of land subject to these appeals. And Mr. Chair, this commission notes that the subject property has been blighted and out of commerce for nearly 2 decades, since August 2005. While the commission finds that based on the evidence and testimony presented that a lower price per square foot is justified and appropriate, this commission cautions the taxpayer that the same result may not occur during the next quadrennial cycle. This commission strongly encourages the taxpayer to expeditiously begin to bring the subject property back into commerce. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Before we vote on the motion, I just want to reflect on record. Commissioner Romick did extensive work to help us get to this point. So I want to thank Greg for doing that, and I think we've reached a very fair and equitable decision. So with that being said, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Move on to
Good morning. For those of you who do not know me, I'm legal counsel to the Tax Commission. I'm going to administer an oath to anybody who is testifying today. If you're not a lawyer and you're going to be coming to either of the tables to testify, I'm going to place you under oath. So I'll have you stand up at your chair. I'll then have you raise your right hand. I'm going to administer an oath. I'll have you affirm the oath by stating I do or I affirm, and I'll have you state your name. So again, if you'll be testifying in any of the matters on today's docket, please stand up at your chair and please raise your right hands. I'll indicate you individually to affirm the oath. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Russell Amos, I do.
Lisa Ross, I do.
Thank you.
Gregory Miller, I do.
Thank you.
David Mejia, I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Paul Keegan, I do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Y'all may all have a seat. Appraisers, same exercise. Please unmute. Raise your right hands. I'll administer an oath. I'll indicate to you individually to affirm the oath. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? George?
I do. George Wallace.
Reed?
Reed Huval, I do.
Mark?
Mark Gillespie, I do.
Nicole?
Nicole Singley, I do.
Paul?
Paul Bennett, I do.
Luke?
Luke Brewer, I do.
And Danny?
Daniel Blanchard, I do.
Great, thank you. Very good, Chairman. Ms. Banks can call the docket.
we have 2 more coming in, Drew, so if you want to catch them now, if they plan to testify.
I could do that, Chairman, or I can take them up just when their appeal comes up, whatever your preference is.
We'll move on with appeals. Ms. Banks.
The first appeal we'll take up this morning is the appeal of CS&M Associate versus Assessor LG Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 24221-71008.
Do I
Please
start?
identify yourself and you can go ahead and get started.
James Morton, I'm attorney for CS&M Associates. Basically, our appeal deals with the fair market value of the 3 combined properties that make up the Sheraton New Orleans Hotel at 500 Canal Street. There really isn't much of a difference between the appraisal that was prepared by the Tax Commission by Mark Gillespie and the appraisal that was prepared by the city, the assessor's office. They both conclude that they both use the income method to determine the fair market value of the property, which takes the net income of the hotel divided by a capitalization rate. The lower the rate, the higher the fair market value. They both concluded that the net income of the hotel was basically the same, almost identical in both appraisals. The difference, and it's a $26 million fair market value difference, is in the capitalization rate used. The capitalization rate used, the base capitalization rate. The base capitalization rate used by Mr. Gillespie was 10%. This was based on using the Real Estate Research Corporation report for second-tier hotels. The second-tier hotel is defined as an aging former first-tier hotel. The Sheraton New Orleans was built in 1980. It is classified properly under the RERC report as a second-tier hotel. That they give a capitalization going-in rate range of 8% to 10.2%. Mr. Gillespie concluded that based on 2023, which is the year that's used in order to determine the 2025 fair market value, that it's an average of 9.4% under the RERC report. He concluded that it should be on the higher range because in 2023, we were still recovering from COVID, so land values and property income was depressed. He used 10% and arrived at a fair market value of about $106 million. The assessor's appraisal used 7.5% as its base cap rate, 2.5% lower, and there is no explanation for how he arrived at that figure. The 7.5% is below the low range of 8% recommended by the RERC report, well below the 9.4% average, and even lower than the 10% that was used by Mr. Gillespie. We believe Mr. Gillespie's appraisal is proper and that the fair market value should be closer to the $106 million figure. That's our appeal.
Okay, we'll hear from the New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Good morning. Excuse me. Lisa Ross, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. This property consists of, is a Sheraton Hotel, and it consists of 3 parcels, if I'm correct, 200 Camp Street, 500 Canal Street, and 522 Common. There was an LTC ruling. This was heard in 2024 at the LTC on December 11th, 2024 for the 2024 value. This is a quadrennial, that was a quadrennial value. We upheld that value for 2025. The change orders have already been done. They're now asking for a lower value based on 2023 financials. We used 2022 for the quadrennial, and the ruling was made in December. Therefore, we're okay to uphold that value for this quadrennial cycle. Coming back every year and asking for a lower value because financials change during a quadrennial cycle, I believe is a little unfair on all sides, because if I understand financials change, but if, let's say for 2024, if they have an exceptional year, occupancy increases, there's talks of insurance decreasing or any expenses decrease, they're not going to come back and say we had a great year, let's raise our value back. So for the purpose of the quadrennial cycle, an LTC ruling has already been made. We use the same lien dates, the same financials. Therefore, I request that we uphold the value that was rendered on December 11th, 2024, for a total value of 126,067,700. And then additionally, that value has not been, the LTC value has not been appealed any further to the courts. So therefore, it's, it was accepted for 2024.
Thank you. We'll hear from the LTC appraiser. Mark?
Good morning, Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. As stated by Mr. Morton, essentially, the nuts and bolts of both appraisals of my appraisal and the assessors are exactly the same. The primary difference is the capitalization rate used. The assessor uses the lowest end of the RERC Tier 2 cap rate, which in my opinion does not reflect the market at that time. I chose the higher end at 10%, which, as I stated more accurately, represents the value as a 1,123. My total market value for the property is 105,899,000, and that encompasses all three parcels that are under appeal. And let's see, the land value, I believe, is 7,840,800. Improvement value at 7,480,800, and the improvement value 98,418,200.
Thank you, Mark. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Ms. Ross. Just to clarify, you mentioned an amount of 126 million. Is that for all three, or is that just for the Canal Street property?
It should be for all three.
We need
So
to clarify that because we don't have that.
For the records, your decision on December 11th, or the LTC's decision on December 11th, I thought of record was 130,575,960 for all three properties.
Well, that's my error. That's an error in my note.
I guess I just asked fellow commissioners if that's your recollection as well.
Commissioner Romig, just to clarify, you all affirmed the assessor's assessments for the other two parcels. So there is an additional 1.089 million for assessment number ending in 905 and 3.418 million for assessment number ending in 0918. You set the value of assessment number ending in 1012 at 126,067,660.
I stand corrected. That 126,067,700 is just for 500 Canal.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions by the commission? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to uphold the requested value by the assessor's office of $126,067,700. That's for 500 Canal, and I believe that would be docket 24-22171-8. Yes.
That's -9. That's 9.
So in previous tax year, here, make a motion to consolidate the three appeals, and then make the motion.
So just to clarify, I'd like to entertain a motion to consolidate the appeals like we did previously. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to consolidate.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Now we'll entertain a motion to set the value of the consolidated appeal.
This is the decision.
All right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for the consolidated value of $130,576,000. That's correct.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, so that took care of A through C. Now we'll take up the appeal of Henry D. Fairbanks versus Assessor L.G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 24221-72023. And that's letter F on your briefing sheets.
We'll hear from the taxpayer. Please identify yourself and you can go ahead.
Thank you, Commission Chair. My name is Hal Fairbanks. I'm here with my wife Lydia Fairbanks about our property at 1364 Moss Street in New Orleans. We were here last year and y'all set a value for the property. At the time last year, prior to the hearing, I had noticed that both the assessor's staff as well as the LTC appraiser had square footage values that were far greater than the square footage in my appraiser's appraisal. And the commission had the assessor had a square footage of 6,303 last year, 6,303 square feet. And the LTC appraiser, Mr. Bennett, had a square footage of, I believe, 4,800 square feet. And our square footage was 3,725 per the appraisal. And prior to the commission hearing, I had asked both the commission appraiser and the assessor staff to come out and check their measurements because it was different. And I brought that up here, but you set a value, you use the information you had available. Two people were reporting higher valuations in my appraiser, so I understand that. So after your hearing last year, I went to the assessor and I said, hey, your square footage is way higher than mine. You come out and remeasure. And so they came out and they remeasured and they did a new measurement, which they attached to their webpage for my property. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you. I'm gonna have this come out right on YouTube. So, so in any case, this is one of the things I submitted. It's just their new drawing. And it now shows that it's a one-story building with 2,438 square footage and the ADU accessory dwelling unit at the property remain the same with 490 square feet on the top floor and 490 and 266 on the bottom floor for a total of 3,684 square feet. So that represents a 41% reduction from the square footage they assured us was correct last time. And now it's on their webpage where they say, well, no, actually the square footage is 3,684. Right. And I went to them after they did this, after they did the remeasurement, and I said, hey, your square footage has come down. Why not do a 41% reduction in value of the improvements? And they said, well, I'm sorry, our hands are tied because the commission set a ruling for the quadrennial value, and we can't change that. Our hands are tied. We can't even correct our own mistakes in favor of the taxpayer. So that's the reason I'm back, because they said they can't correct their mistakes that, even though, they benefit the city and not me. So, our original appraisal had 3,725 square feet. That's more than the 3,684 square feet that was that's now on their webpage. And if you just do a 41% reduction, you get to a value of $678,234 just by the square footage reduction at the valuation they had. And the square footage went down by 41%. You take down their valuation by 41%, you get to $678,234. The appraisal we submitted last year had a property improvement value of 740,000, higher than that. And it had square footage of slightly higher than their new revised square footage of 3684. The square footage was 3725. So what I'm asking is that you use the appraisal from last year. I'd like you to go back and correct last year value, or ask the assessor to do that. And let's move forward with a value of $740,000 based on the square footage of 3725, which is higher than the square footage they're now reporting on their website for my property.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear from the assessor's office.
Yes. I'd like to clarify a couple of things. So this property was appealed and ruled on by the tax commission for 2024. The 2024 original assessment was 1.75 million. It was lowered to 1,575,000, which was affirmed by the by the tax commission for 2024. The property was appealed again. They requested a clarification of square footage. We went out and measured. I'm not sure where he's pulling the square footages, but that is an incorrect measurement. Our measurement,
From their map.
no, sir. You,
Okay.
On to him, you respond to
Yes,
questions
sir.
from us, please.
Yes, sir.
the square footage is incorrect. He's not looking at the sketch correctly. The square footage that we have is 5,600 square feet. The square footage that was done by the Louisiana Tax Commission is slightly less. He has 4,850 square feet. Both of those are significantly higher than the square footage depicted by the property owner, and as well as the appraisal done by the property owner, because they take out the entire bottom floor, which is lived in. I believe last year it was said that it was lived in by an aunt or a cousin. There was a family member living in the bottom floor. We're asking the tax commission to affirm the value that was ruled on last year at 1,574,000, because the appraisal done by the commission takes into consideration a lower square footage, but still comes in at $1,774,000. Our appraisal that was revised for this year also takes into consideration a reduced square footage, and that appraisal, let me pull it up. Sorry. Comes in at 1,700,000 even. They are right in line with each other. We're not asking for an increase. We're just asking for the commission to affirm the value that they set last year.
Thank you. We'll hear from the LTC appraiser, Paul.
Paul Bennett with the Louisiana Tax Commission. I personally appraised the property at 1364 Mall Street with a land value of 912,200 and improvement value of 861,800 for a total improved value of $1,774,000.
Paul, what square footage did you use?
4,850 square feet. And I'm backtracking here just because this is by far the thickest file that I've come across, because we have 3 different appraisals, some of them 100+ pages. So I'm kind of backtracking here to recreate that. Our square footage was taken from one of the appraisals submitted by the taxpayer, and it is basically the summation of the first floor in the basement to come up with the GLA of 4,850. The guest house apartment was taken into consideration on a separate line item. So that's where that is reconciled. So, like I said, it's pretty much taken from, let's see, this appraisal is from 2023. So I believe it was the most recent appraisal supplied to us by the taxpayer.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Questions
Sure.
from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to ask the taxpayer to reiterate a basis. I think you had your request somewhere in the 700,000 range.
740 based on the appraisal we submitted last year. But if you do just a straight reduction, it comes out to be
That's okay. So
yeah,
basically,
678,
and you're representing 3,700 square feet roughly.
roughly 3,700.
So
square
about
feet, yes.
$200 a square.
the same as what the assessor used per square foot last time.
In your 3,700 square feet, are you not counting an area that?
We're
Don't
not
forget, we're
counting-
getting three different numbers here.
We're only counting living area.
Okay, so are you saying you have more area, somebody's not living in it?
We have a garage and we have an area that's less than 7 feet in height. We have an area that's about 6.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you, you're not counting an
I'm
area that
excluding
somebody's
the
living in.
garage and I'm excluding the 600 square, the area that's less than 6.5 square feet or about 6.5 square feet. My sister lives in about 500 square feet of that space. The total space that the assessor excluded from his webpage is about 2,400. And
So you're excluding an area, I ask the question again, are you excluding any area that someone is currently living in?
about 500 square feet, but not the full reduction of
Okay,
2,700 square feet that the assessor made to his drawings.
okay, thank you.
I do, Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple of questions for the other witnesses, if that's okay.
Ask.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bennett, did you ever measure come out and measure the property?
No, sir, I did not, but we're relying on the dimensions and sketch supplied by yourself from the appraisal that was done by
Actually, I
the
supplied
McHenry
that to
Company.
you directly. It didn't come from an appraiser. It came from an architect, and it measures the building square footage, the gross building square footage, not the living area. So as you can see, it's stamped by an architect, not by an appraiser.
Let's see. Now, this is an appraisal report. Most engineers don't complete. This is from the McHenry Company, and this is
Oh, so maybe
detailed as
it made it into McHenry's appraisal, but he excluded the square footage that you didn't exclude. That's less.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, what y'all are
It's not qualified as living.
attempting to disclude is the basement that is
Right.
2,500
raised basement.
and what's that? 2,540 square feet, using the premise that ANSI, anything under ceiling heights under 7 foot tall doesn't count as GLA. However, ANSI isn't mandatory. It is something that people choose to comply by, and the majority of Orleans does not, when it comes to assessments, doesn't use ANSI measurement standards.
I agree. The assessor does not use ANSI, but all licensed Louisiana appraisers and real estate agents must use it for private sector business.
That is incorrect. The only requirement to use ANSI is by Fannie Mae. That is one of the GSE's requirements. Both FHA or VA does not require the use of that. So even on the private sector or the fee side of it, that is the only time it's required to be used.
Is Fannie Mae the largest
Look,
insurer of
stop,
second
stop,
mortgage or
please.
mortgages?
Let's get back to the appeal. We're not going to
Yes, sir.
debate the semantics of what Fannie Mae requires or
Sure.
not. This is about.
I'm just
the
saying
appeal.
it's
The
the
whole
industry
issue is
standard. I'm just
you're-
asking
yeah,
that
you're
industry
excluding
standards.
some property that
Yes,
we
sir.
are counting that we're saying is lived in, and you're saying it's not, it should be excluded.
I'm saying whether or not it's lived in or air conditioned, it should be excluded because it's not the proper height to be included
Okay.
by industry standards that are nationwide and accepted by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Once again, we're not talking about Freddie Mae and
Sure,
Freddie
I
Mac
understand.
here, so.
I do
Any
have another
additional
question.
questions?
May I ask the assessor another question?
Sure.
So right now you have an assessment that indicates a gross building square footage of 5,600 square feet. Is that right?
That is correct.
And what was it last year?
It was 6330, I believe.
6303.
6303. As per your request, we went out and physically measured the building, and our physical measurements came out to 5,600 square feet of living area.
You recognize this drawing from the webpage that I submitted into the record?
I do, but you were looking at this sketch incorrectly, and your square footage that you're coming up with is an incorrect square footage.
I just added 4 numbers. Can you see the addition?
Sir, you are looking at the sketch incorrectly, and you're coming out with an incorrect number. Our number is 5,600
Let
square
me-
feet.
Let me ask you this.
You
What
can
is
have
it,
this back.
what does it say on the first, on the drawing of the larger building? What does
Sir,
it
we
say?
went out and measured the property, and it says 5,600, and that is what we have in our system.
What it says is 1-story framed house.
You're reading
Okay,
this.
Hold up. You asked a question, what was the square footage? He answered it. Any additional questions for the assessor? We're
No.
not going to sit here and
I
debate
appreciate
for an
it.
hour that he says.
No,
it's
I
one
understand.
number, you
I
say
don't
it's
want to
not.
harass anybody. I'm just trying to get to the facts for you guys, so you have the
I
right
have a
facts to
question.
work with.
So,
That's all I had. Thank you.
questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have one, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Russell, just for clarification, the taxpayer mentioned something about, an area being under 7 feet. Is that to be excluded from measurements, or is that part of what we're measuring?
No, sir, any property or part of the property that is finished, conditioned space that is being lived in can be considered GLA. A lot of properties in Orleans Parish are raised basements. They have lower than 8-foot ceilings. I believe Mr. Lowry did this appraisal last year, and it came into a height that was not an unlivable space. In fact, someone is actually living in the space. So for all intents and purposes, if it's conditioned space, finished and air conditioned, we consider that gross living area.
I totally understand. Thank you.
Additional questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I call for a motion to accept the city's valuation, $1,575,000 for the building, and land is $414,600. Improvements of $1,160,400. Total of $1,575,000.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Next, we'll take up the appeal of Janice B. Ambrosia, docket number 24221-72036.
Please identify yourself and you can get started.
Good morning, it's Janice Ambrosia. I went to my appeal hearing with the New Orleans Assessor's Office knowing that the living area square footage of my house was incorrect. I asked the representative how they arrived at the valuation of my property, and she said, "We don't have to tell you that." My grandfather built the house in 1927. It's always remained in the family. It was never rented or listed for sale, so there was never any public information available about the house. I surmise the assessor's office relied on the unverified and incorrect information directly from the Zillow site. You could see pages 2 and 3 from my exhibit list. The incorrect property record has a living area listed at 2,779 square feet, and the valuation listed at $626,100. So Zillow must have falsely assumed that the house is in good condition and the basement area was converted to living space. In reality, the house condition is only fair, and it is currently uninhabitable. Look at pictures showing the problems and damages on pages 4 through 8 of the exhibit list. Those include roof is leaking and part of the ceiling is caving in. Gutters are damaged. No working toilets or appliances. Plumbing needs to be replaced. Pipes are leaking. All drains are clogged. Water service has been turned off due to leaks. Heater doesn't work. There is no insulation. None of the windows open. The frames are rotted. All of the electric is antiquated and needs to be replaced. Exterior has cracks and falling stucco. Needs to be scraped, patched, replastered, and painted. They have also termite, roach, and rodent infestations. For the past 35 years, my mom hadn't done proper maintenance or repaired any damage. To sum it up, the house needs to be gutted and rebuilt. Moving on to the basement, please see pages 9 through 12 of the exhibit list. There's a parking area for 2 vehicles. There's a water heater, washer, and dryer. There are wires, plumbing, pipes, and vents exposed. There is an old non-working heating system. There are storage areas, some with shelves or cabinets, but this is to use at your own risk because the basement floods in 3 locations after a long, hard rain. This is an unfinished basement, not living area. The councilwoman attending the New Orleans Assessor's hearing recommended that my assessment be reduced, but she told me they don't have to follow her recommendation, and they didn't. They kept it the same, so that brings me here. I measured the exterior square footage of a house according to the diagram sketch listed on page 14 of the exhibits. The exterior square footage equals 2,140 square feet. I measured the interior square footage of the house going room by room, calculating the length and width, and then totaling all the rooms. Interior square footage equals 1,925 square feet. The difference between the two measurements is because the exterior and interior walls are not included in the living area. I'd like to do a comparison of three similar properties approximately the same age and located within 1 block radius of my property. First, I'd like you to look at pages 13 and 14 of the exhibit. 900 Taft, located on the corner directly across the street from my house. The lot size is 85 times 127 feet, appraised for $90,800. The living area is 5,958 square feet, valued at $571,400. That equates to $96 a square foot. The building is in better condition and it has greater than 3 times the living space in my property, but it is only assessed for $32,300 more than mine. Second, please look at pages 15 and 16 to see my house located at the corner of Dumaine and Taft. The lot size is slightly smaller, measuring 70 times 123 square feet, and appraised for $157,500. This amount is $66,700 more. My building living area is erroneously listed as 2,779 square feet, valued at $472,400, which equates to $170 a square foot. Third, on page 17, we have 864 Roosevelt, located catty corner to my house. It has a building living area of 4,214 square feet, valued at $377,100, equaling $89 a square foot. Lastly, on page 18, we have 952 Peachtree Loop, located in the next block. It has a living area of 3,452 square feet, valued at $314,100, which equates to $91 a square foot. The Roosevelt and Peachtree Loop properties are in about the same condition as mine, but appraised for $80 a square foot less. I respectfully request the Louisiana Tax Commission change the inequitable assessment on my property located at 3801 Dumaine in New Orleans. I feel that I have sufficiently outlined the following errors. 1, the total living area should be changed from 2,779 to 1,925 square feet. The land value should be changed from $157,500 to $90,800. The building value should change from $472,400 to $250,250. This was the most difficult value to determine because the 3 comparisons were assessed at about $90 a square foot, and my property was assessed at $170 a square foot. So I took the average of the 2 property square footage amounts, which ended up being $130 a square foot, and used that figure to calculate the assessment, which I consider fair. These measures will reduce the total assessment of my property to $341,050. Finally, the New Orleans Assessor's website states it fairly determines property values with incredible accuracy. It looks at similar properties, the square footage, age, and location. The primary goal is to make everything fair and equitable. I think they missed the goal, and I demonstrated my property is assessed higher than other similar properties. I appreciate your time, and I'm now requesting a fair and equitable appraisal. Thank you.
We'll hear from the New Orleans assessor.
Yes, good morning. The subject property is a single-family residential building. It was originally valued at $629,900. That property value was affirmed by the Board of Review. Louisiana Tax Commission appraisals higher at $675,000. We did a fee simple appraisal on the property ourselves. That appraisal came in at $729,000. All the values are indicating a value should be increased, but we're asking the Tax Commission to affirm the Board of Review's value. Just to give a little clarification, the comparables used or provided by the taxpayer in the exhibits All properties are at $25 a square foot for land. The comparables as well as the subject property. As far as the building value and total value, there's a significant difference in the building values. It's not because it's an inequitable assessment. It's because the taxpayers using multifamily properties that traditionally sell for a lower price per square foot than a single-family property. The other issues are that the property is in, we consider it to be very good condition based on an inspection done by our office for the fee simple appraisal, and the properties in question are fair condition properties in the taxpayers' exhibits. Taking a look at the information, I'd just like to point out, I don't know if the commission received the information from the board review, but during the board review, the taxpayer provided photographs. These were not dated. We couldn't conclude that the property had any condition issues whatsoever. We asked to go and take a look at the property. We were refused entry by the taxpayer. They did not want us to go and verify the condition of the property. So in that instance, we got to do an exterior inspection. That exterior inspection looked like it was in very good condition. That's why our value came in at $729. We're just asking for the $629,900 because the properties are valued similarly to single-family properties. You cannot compare a multifamily property to a single-family property. And if you're not going to give us access to the interior of your property, then you can't claim that there's a condition issue. Otherwise, you would let us in the document that. So that we're asking to affirm the board of use value.
Before we hear from the LTC appraiser, did they request access to the property?
Originally, when I first, they called me before the hearing, and they wanted to come, and they couldn't come on that date because my mother was dying. I had family coming over. I had the priest coming to do the last rites, and I just wasn't available. So if you say I didn't let them, well, I didn't let them go that date. But then later, they had an opportunity to come, and they never asked to come.
Okay.
And when the LTC, the appraiser came out, he called me and said he was coming to do the thing. And I said, what time should I meet you there to let you in? And he said he wanted to just do a drive and walk around thing. He didn't want me to come out. I would have given him access.
Thank you. We'll hear from the LTC appraiser. Reed?
Reed Huval. I did an appraisal of 3801 Dumaine Street. Came up with a total value of $675,000. The land value is $157,500, and improvement value is $517,500.
Thank you, Reed. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions for Ms. Ambrosia. In following up, I'm sorry to hear about what was happening at the time that the assessor requested. Did you follow back with them asking for a separate date?
No, right after that, I went to the hearing and I had the pictures, the photos and everything. And the councilwoman looked at them and said, yeah, I agree with you, but.
And did you represent that no one is living, it's not livable at all, that no one has been in this home?
Water's turned off and everything. There's no one living there. You can even check the, electric bills. There's no usage.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I apologize if I just want to interject. We did offer to go for a second date. The first date that was refused was for the board review. Mr. Wilson, who did perform the appraisal from our office, did reach out and offer to go a second date for this hearing, for the appraisal that was done for this hearing, and that was refused.
May I respond? That is not correct. I didn't even know they were going that date. He called me after he had been over there and asked me what the condition of the house was. Didn't ask to come, just wanted to know what I thought the condition of the house was. And I told him everything. And he said, oh, well, then I might, change my figures. I might go back and redo my appraisal. So I called him the next morning to ask him if he had done that. And he said no. And then he said it would behoove me to withdraw my application.
Okay, thank you.
With the LTC.
Additional questions from the commission?
I have a question for our staff appraiser, Reed. Did you try to go in and inspect the house?
So when I talked to her on January 27 of this year at 10:57 a.m., all the conversation we had about the house was she let me know that it was a very old home, that it was never renovated, and it was in bad condition in her opinion. She never mentioned anything about square footage. She never mentioned anything about, damage to anywhere, it's like roof leaking or any of that sort of thing. She just told me it was in bad condition. I said, if you would like to send me any information you have, any pictures or anything, please, here's my email. Nothing was ever received to me through email. So that's kind of where I stood with it. When I got there, I verified assessor's square footages and stuff and went with that square footage based upon the information I was given.
Thank you, Reed.
Any other questions from the commission?
May I respond?
Yes, ma'am.
I did tell him the square footage was incorrect, and I had already submitted all of the photos to the Louisiana Tax Commission, so he had those, and they were doing their rebuttal to my appeal.
Okay. Any additional comments from the commission? Any additional questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the assessor's prayer of $629,900. It's a land value of $157,500, improvements at $472,400, noting that that amount is less than the LTC staff appraisal and the facts presented today.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll take up item D on the agenda. It's the appeal of Talbot 747 LLC, docket number 24221-71029.
But yeah, before you get started, Drew's going to swear you in. But you can go ahead and get started.
Yes. Name is Sean Talbot. I'm here on behalf of Talbot 747 LLC, of which I am a member. The LLC owns property at 747 Magazine Street in the Warehouse District of New Orleans. It's a second floor office condominium, measures about 6,433 square feet. I am a part owner of the property. We acquired it in October of 2004. There have been no upgrades to the property since then, since it was built actually about 22, 23 years ago. Our assessment for 2025 increased dramatically to $1,544,000, up over, which is about $240 a foot over the 24 market value assessment of $176 a square foot. This represents an increase of about over 68% of what our 2023 assessment was. This was during the time when the market values for downtown office space was decreasing rapidly due to perceptions of use of office in downtown settings, as well as increases in insurance and taxes. We appealed the assessment. We did an analysis of the property and the appeal. We requested a value of $1,125,000. We went through our appeal hearing. The hearing officers and us came to an agreement with a valuation of $1,165,000. This valuation was rejected by the assessor's office. Since then, the property has been appraised by the LTC, and the valuations that have been coming back from that and other appraisers are in line with what we were pleading for in terms of value and what our hearing officers and us had agreed to previously.
Thank you. We'll hear from the New Orleans Assessor's Office. Okay. Any questions from the commission? I want to hear from them. Sorry, Luke, we don't want to hear from you, but it seems we've settled, so.
Hey, that's great. I'm glad I could help.
Yeah. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I call for a motion to agreed price on from the city to the taxpayer of $1,125,000, which is $286,300 land, $838,700, total $1,125,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we have item E. This is the appeal of Velocity Assets LLC, docket number 24221-71062.
Is there a taxpayer representative present? Seeing none, we'll hear from the New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Okay, no, my mic is not on. Okay, so at 507 South Solomon, like I said before in the prayer, we originally valued the property at $722,900. It was affirmed by the Board of Review. We did a fee simple appraisal for this property. It came in at $666,000. The main takeaways of this is that we're about 11% difference from Louisiana Tax Commission appraisal. There was a renovation of the property, permit number 23-02655-RNVN, for a complete renovation of the property. It was taken out October 12, 2023. We did a field visit on March 17, 2025. We changed the condition of the appraisal to excellent based on the permit that we had in the office and a field inspection. Basically, Nicole's value, if you were to take into consideration a different condition, then that would be right in our value, the $666,000. So that's what our prayer is for, our revised appraisal, 666 total value.
Okay, we'll hear from the LTC appraiser. Nicole?
Good morning, everyone. Nicole Singley, LTC appraiser. So I personally did complete an exterior-only site visit of 507 South Solomon Street, per the appellant's request. I was able to obtain interior photos from Zillow of the update. So Russ is on point. It is a renovation. I completed the sales comparison approach as well as the income approach. They were given equal weight, arriving at an estimated fair market value of $592,500. The income approach to value actually was much closer to the assessor's number than the sales comparison approach. Just when you averaged the two together, it came to the $592,500. That's $62,000 to the undisputed land value and $530,500 to the improvement value.
Thank you, Nicole. Questions from the
welcome.
commission?
Mr. Chair, just one quick question from Ms. Singley.
Yes.
So when you looked at the interior photos, that was with the permit with the renovation, you believe? So
I believe so, yes, sir, because there were also MLS photos of like prior to renovation where it definitely showed that it was dated and needed, yes, definitely a change in condition. It has been updated, yes, sir.
and your value includes that update?
As far as like Russ said, if as far as yes, it does, as very good. Excellent, I usually would quote, like if it's a renovation being like new condition, I would usually bump it up to an excellent, just not knowing every detail as far as to the extent of the renovation. You know, I just kept it at feeling that very good was a fair condition rating. Not saying it possibly could be excellent. I just didn't have that, type of information. I wasn't privileged to the exact details of the renovation.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to go with the Orleans Parish assessed value of $666,000 based on their appraisal and also our income appraisal by the LTC.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, next we have item J on the agenda, and it's the appeal of 930 Fortress LLC docket number 24221-71025.
We'll hear from the taxpayers rep. Please identify yourself.
Alicia Labat for the taxpayer, 930 Poydras LLC. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. The subject property we're discussing today is a 502 space parking garage with 3 retail components located on the ground floor. The subject property was under a pilot agreement with the Industrial Development Board and the pilot agreement was subject to expire in December of 2023. As a result of that, it was taxable. When the property is under a pilot agreement, it is exempt. The original assessment that the assessor published in the quadrennial cycle had no basis in value. They placed the property on for the bond issuance for the property, which was $20 million. This is a parking garage. It is not worth $20 million. We filed an appeal to the Board of Review, and the Board of Review chose not to make a valuation determination on the property because it was still in the name of the Industrial Development Board. So they didn't want to touch that. It was a legal issue. The transfer of title was going to occur in December of that same year. The taxpayer chose to, okay, I'm going to stop there. So that's just a little bit of history. I'm going to come back to it. So the subject has a 33% vacancy of the 2 retail units. One of the tenants has not paid rent for the past 2 years. It had a lease, a contract with Shell Oil for 300 parking spaces, which has been terminated. And it's in a location that it's not really desirable. Its purpose is for special event parking. So Saints games, Pelicans games, which has a very limited time frame, as you will. I'd like to address the evidence that the assessor provided. The assessor has stated that we had a settlement agreement with them for the quadrennial year. And we did do that. And I do understand from the assessor's point of view when you have a taxpayer who comes back repeatedly asking for additional reductions. However, the assessor's office is charged with valuing property as of the quadrennial valuation date, which is 1/1/23, based on the site estate, which for this property is 1/1/24. The economic condition of the property changed substantially. The net operating income of the property decreased by $178,000, which translates in layman's terms to $1.7 million in fair market value. So the change in economic condition warrants a reduction in the valuation for this tax year. Additionally, the agreement that we came to the assessor's office with, the taxpayer was not satisfied with. The original value that we had agreed upon was $9 million. we had an agreement with the assessor's office, and then the assessor's office came back and said, no, 10 million. Because the pilot was set to expire, the taxpayer was responsible for paying based on what their tax bill was going to be based on what the fair market value that was set by the assessor was. That value was astronomical. The taxpayer did not want to be delinquent in taxes because it was going to create an issue with clearing title. And so therefore, we came to an agreement with the understanding that we could come back in the ensuing tax year and file an appeal. The assessor's office has quoted legislation that is in place. That legislation was not in place when our settlement agreement occurred in March of 2024. It was not in place in August of 2024. The effective date of that legislation is January 1 of 2025. And so that should have no bearing on our request to acknowledge the change in economic condition for the subject property. Also, within the evidence that the assessor provided, they provided an income approach for the property. There's some inaccurate data within that income approach. They used the wrong effective tax rate. Basis points make a difference when we're talking about capitalization rates. They used the year-end 22 income when we are referring to 1/1/24. So our request is to use the year-end 23 income because it is such a significant difference in valuation. Additionally, they have provided an advertisement for the apartment complex. This is a parking garage. It is a separate building. It is a separate parcel. It is separate ownership. There are approximately 30% of the parking spaces are leased to the adjacent parking garage. That still leaves 70% vacancy for a parking garage. This is an income-producing property. It is desirable to investors based on its ability to earn income and what the fair market value is. The assessor is charged with valuing property based on fair market value, the willing purchase price between a buyer and a seller. And any investor would look at the year-end 23 and 24 and ensuing values before purchasing the property. Our prayer is that the commission take into consideration the year-end 23 income and value the property at $7,537,000.
Thank you. We'll hear from the assessor's office.
Hello, James Makita at the Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. Yeah, a lot of the information she gave was correct as far as initial valuation went out for 2024 for $20,161,100. There was a settlement agreement signed by the tax representatives for a total of $10,040,000. We feel the same as the other that was an agreement for the quadrennial. Things change. If things went up, they surely wouldn't come in, or would we have the right to adjust the valuation upwardly? So it's still our prayer that we upheld the signed settlement agreement for $10,040,000.
Thank you. We'll hear from the LTC appraiser, Mr. Wallace.
Yes, sir. Good morning, George Wallace, Louisiana Tax Commission. I appraised the property at 930 Poydras on February 19th of 2025. The land value was uncontested. I did a cost approach, came in at a value of $9,354,000. Also did an income approach. I used the actual income and expenses for 2022 and 23 and came up with a value of $8,125,000. That was with a 10.3 cap rate. With a final value, I relied on the income approach at $8,125,000. That's $1,588,400 for the land, $6,536,600 for the improvements.
Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the taxpayer representative. Just to recap, the agreement that was reached was to keep taxes current, not delinquent, to facilitate a transfer in title.
Correct.
That transfer occurred in
December of 2023.
and that was a sale.
it was a sale. Technically, it's a transfer of title from the Industrial Development Board to the lessee, 930 Poitras LLC.
And was there a dollar amount assigned to that transfer in value?
Not that I am aware of.
So there's no consideration, there's nothing, it's just a transfer of title.
That's correct. It's been a while since I've read that pilot agreement, but typically the way that they're structured is it's between the Industrial Development Board and the lessee, and there's a period where it exits, and it might be for some nominal $1,000 that it reverts back to the lessee.
Okay, thank you.
It's not an arm's length transaction. There's no consideration typically stated in those.
Excuse me, if I may address the value that is placed on our system for pilot agreements. In order for us to keep a track of the amount of the bonds that are issued on each pilot agreement, we usually put that record on because it is non-taxable. We usually put that record on for the amount of the bonds that are issued. So there is no real estate value associated with that. That's actually the bond amount, which is why when we were presented with correcting the value for that, even though it was still under the pilot agreement at the time, we knew it was about to expire, which is why we came to, we settled it at the value we settled at for, I don't know, it was 10,040,000.
Additional
Okay.
questions from the commission?
No, sir.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I looked at the income approaches, and I did average of the income approaches with the assessor's cap rate. And so that total value is $9,095,000 with the land value of $1,588,400 and an improvement value of $7,506,600.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the appeal of Howard Avenue Garage LLC, docket number 24221710026, and that is item K on the agenda.
You can go, ma'am.
Yep, sorry, just trying to find my place. Give me just a moment. In here with my documents. All right. So this is also a parking garage. It's located on the border of the downtown development district in New Orleans. It is a less than desirable area. It is not, there's the only dedicated parking that it has is a contract that's with the Sewage and Water Board in New Orleans. The Sewage and Water Board reduced the number of spaces within their lease. As such, the income is consistently trending downward. Income producing properties are only worth what their income will produce. And this particular property, when you analyze the income, you get a value of $1,222,000. This, we acknowledge, is an unreasonable value because it sits on a large piece of property in the downtown development district, and we would not ask the assessor to reduce the land value and have a negative value on the building. However, we ask for a value that makes it comparable with the similar garage that kind of sits in a less than desirable area for $9,000 per space. Like the previous garage, the cap rate that the assessor is using should consider the fact that New Orleans is an underperforming market. RERC analyzes the Southwest region, which includes higher performing markets such as Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, and we can all agree that the density and population in there warrant a a lower cap rate, whereas New Orleans warrants a higher cap rate. Therefore, it is our prayer that the value be set at the tax commission appraiser's value of $3,500,000.
Thank you. New Orleans Assessor's Office.
Hello, James McKeita, Orleans Parish Assessor's Office. This is another one. The 2024 valuation was originally at $4,910,800. It went to Board of Review. We spoke with the tax rep and we agreed to a value. It's in the packet of their requested value. We settled at $4,483,000. This is based upon the 1/1/23 lien date. So to come in with the new financials every year, it seems unfair for the assessor's office to have to look at every financials for every business every year. So we're requesting that the agreed upon value from 2024 at $4,483,000 be upheld.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear from the LTC appraiser, Mr. Wallace.
Yes, sir. George Wallace again, Louisiana Tax Commission. The land value on this property was uncontested, therefore, the agreed upon amount was used in the report. I did a cost approach, had a value of $4,142,000. Income approach, $1,345,000. Had a final value of $3,500,000. Total in the land, $2,677,500. Improvements, $822,500.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, two quick questions. Whoever can answer first. I'm just verifying the cap rate. From the assessor's review, I have 0.1081, and from LTC's valuation on the income approach, 0.11, which seems pretty tight rounding wise. Anybody can confirm that?
Our cap rate, our loaded cap rate was at 10.81%.
Mr. Wallace?
My cap rate was at 0.11.
So the difference is really the income, Mr. Wallace, that the taxpayer presented for this new year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to go with the assessor's prayer of $4,483,000. It's $2,677,500 for land, $1,805,500 for improvements.
Have a motion, discussion on the motion?
I have a discussion on it, and only because when you look at their own income approach from the assessor's office, it's 3.8 million. And I understand that y'all had an agreement, but when it comes in front of us for the first time, I feel like we also have an obligation to look at y'all's appraisals and, you know, go off of that, go off the information that's provided for us. And so I came into a number around the average of the appraisals of 3.69,400,000 for the total value. And that's, like I say, that's a couple $100,000 less than y'all's own income approach from the assessor's office. And right fairly close to what they're requesting. So I see a total value of $400 of the total value. That'd be a land value of $2,677,500 with an improvement value of $1,012,900. That's
So before we get too far, we have a motion from Commissioner Romick to accept the value. And Greg, repeat those numbers again, if you don't mind, please.
My values were $2,677,500 for land, so that's in line with Commissioner Frazier's proposal. For the improvements, I had $1,805,500.
So we're going to vote on the motion that's on the floor first, which is Greg's motion to accept the assessor's value. If that motion does not pass, we will circle back to Commissioner Frazier's alternative motion. So just so we're clear on this one, I would do a roll call just to be sure.
Okay, all in favor of, well, I'll just do the roll call. Okay. Commissioner Romick, yes?
Yes.
Right, okay. Commissioner Leone,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier,
no.
Chairman Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Guidry.
Yes.
It passes.
Okay, so the motion passes. The value set at the assessors value of the 4.483 million.
$4,483,700.
Sorry, thank you. About an hour. Okay.
I did all of that.
Okay, next we have the appeal of the Jong LLC. That's item L on our agenda. That's docket number 24221711028.
Or you can get started.
Good morning, Commission members. Just let me get myself situated. This is the Jung LLC. Yes, sir, and we have, I believe this was in March, we had a consent agreement, which we're in agreement with to continue with that. The taxpayer is fine with that. So I don't know whether you, whatever pleases the commission, if I read it into the record or just.
Yeah, just tell us
submit a
what it
copy.
is and we'll get the assessor to agree to it.
Certainly. Total market value is 18,630,000, with the land being 6,891,200. The improvements 11,738,800.
Is that value acceptable to the city of New Orleans?
That is acceptable.
Okay, since we have an agreement, I will entertain a motion to accept the value of the 18,630,000 based on the numbers they gave.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept that value of the appraise of the parish of New Orleans.
We have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, next we are on item M, the appeal of Gumbo Alley LLC, docket number 24221711030.
Again, Mr. Chairman, we have a consent decision, this one from December of 2024, and we've conferred with the taxpayer, and they're in agreement with maintaining that. You would like me to, I'll read that into the. Total value is 75 million. The land, 4,026,600. The improvements, 70,973,400.
Is that value acceptable to the city of New Orleans?
That is acceptable.
Okay.
I also move that we accept that appraised value, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. You know we like seeing y'all, but y'all could do this before y'all
I
get
know,
here.
right?
Just for the record, just letting y'all know.
Okay, moving on to item N, the appeal of AVR NOLA Canal Street Hotel LLC, docket number 24221711033.
If it pleases the commission, there are a couple of others that are a similar situation that we can read through in the docket if you'd like to do that. Okay. Item W would be the next one. That is DA-SP NOLA LLC.
Okay, so that is item W on the agenda. Appeal of DASP NOLA LLC, docket number 242217218.
Yes, and this is one where the LTC actually issued a decision, and the taxpayer does not wish to pursue it any further. They're satisfied with that decision. Do you, would you like me to read that?
Please.
That total market value, 22,717,800, with the land being 1,680,600. The improvements, 21,037,200.
Is that value acceptable to the city?
That is acceptable.
Okay, since we have an agreement between the taxpayer and the city, do I hear a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept that appraised value that's been presented by the city of New Orleans.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
And the next one is X, I'm sorry, not X, Y, 701 South Carrollton. And I had a copy of that, although I can't find it.
That's item Y.
Item
Up-
Y, 701
yes, that's
South
right.
Carrollton, I'm gonna have to find. I thought I had a copy of that consent decision as well.
Okay, that's docket number 24-221-77007.
Yes, commission members, the total value, 18,397,000, with the land being 2,277,000, the improvements being 16,120,000.
Is that value acceptable to the city of New
That
Orleans?
is acceptable.
Okay, we have a motion. We have an agreement between the taxpayer and the city of New Orleans to accept the value set by the tax commission's appraiser at 18,397,000. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept that appraised value that's been accepted by the parish of Orleans.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion? Before we go on, I just want to make a point to give kudos to the LTC tax appraisers, because a lot of these values are selling at the appraised value of the LTC appraiser. So I think that's a compliment to the work they're doing. So even though we're not calling on you folks, we appreciate your efforts that you're doing to get us through this. So is there any further discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
That was the last one, although the assessor's office and I had a conversation this morning, and if you'd like, Lisa, we can discuss items P through V, which are
Yes.
together, that is the hotel
ones
we came to an agreement on. And let me,
That's what he was saying. He did the consolidation.
it's, yes, yes.
Actually, it's seven. It's seven.
P, Q, R,
P
S,
through-
T, U, V.
Yeah, it should be seven total. Right. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on to the appeals of first-class hotels. That is docket numbers 24-221-71036 through
04.
24-221-71042. First-class hotels LLC.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to consolidate all those appeals.
We have a motion to consolidate those appeals. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. The consolidated value?
Okay, you want me to read off the dockets individually, or the only value that is going to change is docket ending in 036?
That is correct. Yes.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've come to an agreement that docket number 24-22171-036 shall have a total value $56,245,300. That being land, $2,993,400. Improvements, $53,251,900.
Is that acceptable to the city of New Orleans?
That is acceptable. That is agreement.
Motion will be made is to all the consolidated ones as submitted with that one change to that one with the values just given. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve dockets 24-22171-036 through 24-22171-042, with specific attention to docket 24-22171-036 at an agreed upon amount in total of $56,245,300. That's $2,993,400 for land, $53,251,900 for improvements, with all of the remaining dockets being as presented by the parties in our briefing sheets.
Thank you, Commissioner Romick. We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Now we'll take up the appeal of AVR NOLA Canal Street Hotel LLC, docket number 24221-71033.
And the following docket, 035, is also part of that. One of them is a land only, the other one's the building only. Together, they make up the DoubleTree Hotels. So if you want to consolidate those, the discussion is the same for all of them.
Mr. Chair, I move to consolidate dockets 24221711033 with 24221711035.
We have a motion to consolidate those two appeals. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is adopted.
Okay. Thank you, Commission members. The property before you today is the DoubleTree Hotel. It's a 367-room hotel at 300 Canal Street. The 2025 value is currently $45,200,000. That equates to, on a per key basis, about $123,160 per key. It is higher than the average of its competitive set. We've presented that, and you can see as illustrated in Taxpayer Exhibit 1, Item 3. The average of their competitive set is about $107,800 per key. Most notably, only several months ago in February, the hotel closest in proximity to them, although I think it arguably has greater amenities, the Harrah's Hotel was adjusted to a value of $120,000 per key. I think it's far superior in its amenities and finishes just because it's a newer hotel. The hospitality market is only performing at about 86% of its 2019 occupancy levels. You can see in our exhibits we have presented as illustrated in Taxpayer Exhibit 1, Item 6. It's our survey of about 17,850 hotel rooms in the CBD and French Quarter, and it shows where the hotel market has tracked. I know it's been discussed in several of the appeals earlier today. The first one on today's docket, talking about the cap rate and the range that's provided through RERC. We have provided, if you look in our cap rate data that we have provided, see if I can find that. It's item 8. RERC provides a range. They group the United States into regions. And in our Taxpayer Exhibit Item 7, which is our cap rate data, we have provided for you the glossary in addition to other excerpts from that RERC cap rate study. The glossary in that, it's just a couple of pages past that. The glossary shows that it defines the South region: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas. These contain markets such as Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Birmingham, Nashville, Orlando, Miami, and Tampa. All of these markets are outperforming New Orleans in the hospitality market. And I can turn your attention to our Taxpayer Exhibit 1, Items 7 and 8. And in that, in Item 7, is our, you can see in that the capitalization rate heat map by CoStar. It shows cap rates in this southern region, and with the New Orleans and South Louisiana region being the highest. The next exhibit, 8, has articles regarding New Orleans performance. And the first article is by Jones Lang LaSalle Hotels, and it shows a graphic illustration on the first page of how New Orleans performs first quarter of 24 relative to year-end 2019 in terms of its RevPAR. And you can see New Orleans is off from its 2019 performance. The other markets, with the exception of Atlanta, are all plus, ranging from an additional plus 5% to in Miami and Tampa, 23.9%. So these markets are all outperforming the New Orleans market in the hospitality sector. Using the range, by definition, in the way the math is calculated, if there's a range of RERC cap rates, and New Orleans is at the very bottom of that, the average should not be used. That's why we agree with the LTC appraisers using the upper end of that range. I believe it was a 10 base cap that they were using, whereas the assessor's office just using that average, I think, understates the cap rate. And that's part of the issue that we have. The assessor's office, if they would simply, in looking at their reconciliation for their income approach to value, just adjusting the base cap rate from the 9.1, which is the average, to the 10, loading in the effective tax rate, using their income, you come up with a value of, I have to do the math on that, but 43,760,755. Not quite the value we're looking for, but lower than what they've reconciled, and what they currently have of 45,200,000. We've discussed it in some of our past proceedings, and I don't know whether, unless the commission wants to indulge me, I don't necessarily need to go through and discuss the income stream of a hotel is comprised of both intangibles, real property, as well as furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the assemblage of a workforce, management agreements, franchise agreements. So the task is to find the income attributable just to the land and building, which is what we're discussing today. Our income approach to value, which is contained in Taxpayer Exhibit 4, allocates that income. It takes that income stream and removes the return on FF&E, return of FF&E, and also the intangible business component. And looking at that net operating income, we've reconciled the value. We come up with a net operating income of $4,252,068, far less than what the assessor has produced. But nonetheless, using an appropriate cap rate to the assessor's income results in a lower value. Using the appropriate cap rate with the income that we've reconciled also results in a lower value. The tax commission's appraisal and the valuation that they've come up with is actually somewhat lower than ours, and we'd certainly be in agreement with that. But we're just asking for relief in the tax commission to consider all the evidence we've presented and also the disparity in what we think is an appropriate cap rate. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Back, I'm sure, with some questions.
Good morning again. This is another hotel that was, of course, all properties were revalued for the 2024 quadrennial cycle, which included all hotels that we are hearing today. Some have been heard previously. This is one, we had a list of hotels that were brought to us with requested lower values than what we originally came up with during the quadrennial. And this is actually one of them that we settled during the border review process in 2024 with the lien date of 1/1/2023. At the time, the requested value for this particular hotel was a total value of $44,040,000. We landed on a settled agreement for $45,200,000, which is where the $45,200,000 came from, which this parcel, which is the building improvement only parcel, the total value for this is $42,725,400. We just request that that agreed upon value for the 2024 quadrennial cycle using not only income from 2022, but also considering the fact it's an agreement from what they requested during the board review process in 2023 for the 2024 cycle. So I said a lot, so we just want to uphold the value that we're already at.
And Carl, what value y'all asking for, just so we're clear? The city is asking for the 42,725,400. No one's disputing the second parcel, which is just the land value.
The total value, both land and building, both dockets, 39,636,000. Now, if you were referring to the other number I threw out there, that was the assessor's income using a different cap rate.
Being asked. We'll hear from the LTC appraiser.
Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraise the subject property utilizing the income and expenses provided by the taxpayer, and for both parcels, determined the overall market value to be $38,323,000, land value $2,474,600, and improvement value $35,848,400.
It's a lot of big numbers, just so we're all gonna be clear on what we're doing. The 2,474,500 for the land's not being disputed. We're really talking about the value of the hotel. Our appraiser has it at 35,848,000. The taxpayer is requesting 37,161,400, and the city is asking for the 42,725,000. Or y'all had a different number, didn't you? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
40 okay.
42,725,400.
Okay,
That was
just so
agreed
we're all
upon.
clear on the numbers. Any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, just as a, for the taxpayer, Mr. Cahill, so an amount was agreed to, correct, for the previous
Correct.
assessment. And then in your item 4 in your exhibit, just the comparison of the per key for competitive, and then in comparison to the assessed value for 2025. So I guess reflecting back in the previous year, was there that discrepancy in the previous year with the per key rate as well, from what you then agreed to, or your taxpayer agreed to?
I think it was most notably the Harris Hotel, which drives it down. That settlement was just entered into last February. But understanding our appeal was lodged before that, some of this disparity still exists, but with this taxpayer, the increased expenses, insurance, which I'm going to get into in the next one actually as well. I mean, it's these increased expenses that are really hurting. And of all the hotels we've had to appeal, we only have, 3 of them here today. And we had quite a bit more that we settled and are done with, and you're not going to see
I
again.
appreciate that. So it's really the economic experiences in this cycle that's presenting this request for the decline. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I just looked at the average of our income, once again. I'm pretty consistent with that. So I came up with a total value of 44. Minus the land value, that would be an improvement value of $41,525,400.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Can you repeat the numbers, please?
It's 41, for the improvement, it's $41,525,400.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our last appeal of the morning is the appeal of Royal Sonesta Incorporated, docket number 242217222, and that is item X on the agenda.
Is this the best one or the worst one we say for last?
This one is somewhat unique in its circumstances, and I can describe that to you. Some of the same issues apply. There's in our evidence flows in much of the same way. You'll see in our taxpayer exhibit 1, item 3 is a competitive set analysis of the comparable hotels. Additionally, there is in Taxpayer Exhibit 1, item 5, is their actual insurance expenses. And it shows that the insurance increased 65.5% in the past 2 years. And that is just the premium. I think we all know, if I say we all know, you may be aware, although the premiums have increased, the level of coverage often is decreased because your deductibles go down, they're capping the amount of payout, so you're really getting less in paying more. And I think that's what this hotel is experiencing as well. But the unique feature of this discussion and appeal today is how this property came before you. And the assessor's office in their presentation and what they're going to talk about is that there was a settlement on this and there's email traffic and discussion. This one is unique in that the taxpayer never got the benefit of appealing this property through the regular channels of a board of review and onto this forum here. They received a 10-day letter. What that means is the taxpayer never received a value notice prior to the opening of the rolls in July. So they never had an opportunity to go and discuss the assessment informally. They never had an opportunity to lodge an appeal with the Orleans Parish Board of Review. They got a 10-day letter in October after the BOR process had already closed and finalized. So they were stuck with the procedure of having to discuss with the assessor, come up with value. If they did not like the assessor's value, they couldn't come to some agreement, they would have to appeal that. Our understanding is to a district court. And the tax bill was not going to be revised. The tax bill that was coming out in January would not have been adjusted or revised until there was some finality to this discussion. So they were presented with the idea of, do they take the tax bill, pay it under protest, go through the legal process of appealing it legally and to a district court to try to get it referred back here, or however the procedure. I'm not an attorney, so this is just how it's been described to me. Or do they accept, some kind of settlement with the understanding that they can revisit this next year being this year. So what you're going to see there is a 10-day letter in October of 23, final conclusion and discussion, and they agreed to a value in November or December of 23 in order to revise the tax bill that they would pay in January or February of 2024. Keeping in mind, and we think that those circumstances should allow the commission and the assessor to make some revision to this assessment. Keeping in mind that the legislation that everyone's referring to was not presented to the legislative session until, when is it usually convened? In May of June of 2024, and that's to take effect in January of 2025. So we think the circumstances of this taxpayer not being able to present their case to the Board of Review and on to the Tax Commission, we find ourselves here today. And we think that those circumstances should not hamstring this commission from making a decision based on the merits of their income, their additional expenses of insurance as well. And finally, in conclusion, one of the things I wanted to point out, the assessor's information and the data that they've presented, they do reconcile an income approach to $56,761,500. I see that on one of their page 2 or 3 of their evidence. That number is even somewhat lower if you use a base cap rate of 10% for the reasons I described in our past hearing, which I'm happy to regurgitate again, but the commission may
We've got it.
feel like they've heard it. Okay. So the assessor's office reconciles a value in their income approach of their data of $56,761,000. Using an adjusted cap rate, 10%, you come up with a value of roughly $52.5 million. We're requesting a value of $53,130,000. Happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
You want office?
Good morning again. This property is the Royal Sonesta Hotel, if that had not been mentioned earlier, on Bourbon Street. They did receive a 10-day letter for 2024, and I will explain why. And it inadvertently, the improvement came off of the tax roll. So therefore, I don't have the letter in front of me. I can't attest to the date that it was sent, but I thought it was sent before October. However, it gives the taxpayer 10 days to contest the new value, in which they have time to present evidence to us and come to some type of agreement. If an agreement is not reached on value, then there's the opportunity to file a lawsuit, which did not happen. During the course of that discussion, we did receive income. I don't remember what value was requested. I do know that we settled up an amount of $59,875,100. That 10-day letter was a supplemental letter, as I stated earlier, due to an erroneous assessment for 2024, which we corrected. There is so my request is just to uphold the settled upon value of $59,875,100, which we did have the opportunity. I think the final letter may have been sent in October, but the initial letter, I believe, was sent in August. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it was sent before the board of review happened, although the time to file an appeal had already expired.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Mark Gillespie, LTC appraiser.
Yes, sir. Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraised the subject property using the actual income and expenses provided by the taxpayer and determined the overall value of the property to be $53,871,000, undisputed land value $4,386,300, and the improvement value $49,484,700.
Thank you, Mark. Questions from the committee? I'm sorry, Carl.
If you don't mind, may I just add, the first date of our email correspondence where we were even made aware of this is October 20th, 2023. And we're not arguing with the assessor's desire to correct the assessment. We're just saying that they did not have the same opportunities afforded to them to go through the channels. And that's why we find ourselves here today.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Questions from the commission?
Yes, sir. I have one question. Mr. Kao, you had done a calculation, and I thought you came into the 55 million range. Would you just revisit what contributed to that? I think it was one of your last statements.
The assessor's office has in their financial data reconciled a value of 56,761,000. And if I take that same income and capitalize it, adjusting that base cap rate of 10%, I come up with a value of 52,480,000, rounded 52,000,005.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I had heard 55. My apologies.
Any additional questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, looking at the income from the assessor in comparison to the LTC, those ranges are very tight, close to 6.3 million on average, and understanding the taxpayer's representative and their cap rate, but the cap rate used by the assessor and the LTC are fairly comparable as well. So I took the average of both NOI and cap. So that would be income of 6.3 million with an average cap of 0.1145. I came to a value of 55,266,375. That would be 4,386,300 for land, 50,880,075 for improvements.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Thank you very much, folks. There is no other matters to come before the commission. Once again, I want to thank y'all for settling the ones you settled. I want to make sure the appraisers realize great work because a lot of those values are what we came up with. We always want to hear appeals, but if you can settle it, that just makes it easier for everybody. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I call for a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. We are adjourned at 10.